If you want to be respected, liked, and taken seriously, your actions matter more than anything. But let's be brutally honest. How many times have you betrayed yourself just to be accepted? How many times have you swallowed your truth, stayed silent, laughed when it wasn't funny, nodded when your soul screamed no, just to keep the peace, to avoid the tension, to be liked? That burns. It tears something sacred inside of you, and still, they don't see you, not really. Because the painful truth is this: the world doesn't value who you are until you show what you're willing to walk away from. Stoic philosophy teaches that it's not the approval of others, but the approval of your own conscience that builds a life worth living. So here's the question: are you living to be liked, or are you living to be respected? Because they're not the same. And the longer you chase one, the further you drift from the other. But once you align your actions with your deepest values, without apology, that's when everything changes. That's when people start to feel your presence before you speak. That's when you become undeniable. If that stirred something in you, if you're ready to stop begging for scraps of validation and start building unshakable self-respect, please subscribe as a quiet vow to yourself. A vow to grow, to think deeper, to act truer. This isn't just content. This is a journey inward, and it starts now. The importance of actions for respect. There's something unspoken that shapes how people treat you, and it has nothing to do with how good your heart is or how kind your intentions are. Most people won't remember what you said, how much you cared, or how hard you tried in your mind. What they remember is what you did. It's your actions that leave footprints, not your feelings. You can want to be seen as loyal, strong, trustworthy, but if your behavior doesn't reflect it consistently, those traits never truly land. This is where many people get stuck. They think because their intentions are good, the world should understand. But the truth is, the world doesn't operate on intention. It operates on observation. And observation is based on what you do, repeatedly, publicly, and quietly. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. And you don't earn it with your words, you earn it with your record. Think of someone you genuinely respect. Maybe it's a teacher, a boss, a friend, a parent. It's likely not just because of what they said, but because of the way they showed up, especially when it wasn't easy. That's what creates weight behind a person's presence. You can feel it when they walk into a room. They don't have to announce anything. Their discipline, their reliability, their quiet consistency. It speaks for them. That's the kind of respect that lasts. It's not loud. It's not performative. It's built in silence, and it's carried like armor. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That one line captures the core of this principle. Stop talking about who you are and start proving it through how you move. The more you explain yourself, the more it shows you haven't fully embodied it. Let your actions explain you. Let your behavior define you. Let your discipline and decisions do the heavy lifting, because the more congruent your behavior is with your values, the less you have to prove anything to anyone. And that congruency is what people respect, what they remember. Here's something people rarely admit. Everyone's watching. Maybe not with judgment, but with curiosity. Especially when you're quiet, consistent, and intentional, people start noticing you differently. They'll observe how you treat others when no one's watching, how you handle stress, how you deal with responsibility. And the pattern they see in you becomes the truth they believe about you. That's why people who act with integrity, even in silence, build unshakable reputations. It's why they're trusted. It's why they're respected. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." It's a brutal truth, but a necessary one. You could promise the world, but if your actions don't match, you become noise. But when they do match, you become a force. We live in a time where it's easy to say a lot, to post, to share, to declare who we are, what we believe, what we value. But very few follow through. Very few make sure their lifestyle matches their message, and that's why actions stand out more than ever now. When you show up on time, keep your word, stay calm under pressure, finish what you start. People take note. You don't need to shout to be seen. You just need to show up when others don't, over and over again. And eventually, your name becomes synonymous with trust, with discipline, with someone who doesn't have to convince anyone of anything. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." This is the heart of Stoicism and the heart of respect. It's not about impressing people. It's about being so consistent, so grounded, so in alignment with your values that people just feel the difference. They trust your presence because it's been backed by behavior, and they remember you, not because of some flashy speech, but because of how you made them feel through what you did, especially when no one else was doing it. The most respected people in any environment, at work, in friendships, in leadership, are not the ones who need to be loud. They're the ones whose actions echo. You remember them because they carried weight, because they were consistent when others were chaotic, because they stood firm when others folded, and you felt safer, more stable, more grounded around them. That's not charisma, that's not charm, that's action, that's alignment, and that's what real respect is built on. Seneca said, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." Your actions are the clearest proof of whether you do. When you're in control of yourself, your habits, your words, and your energy, you move through life differently. You don't chase respect, you create it. You don't ask to be seen. You become someone who can't be ignored, not by force, but by frequency. The world may not thank you for your effort, but it will remember you for your actions. Respect versus being liked, the big question. There's a subtle kind of pain that comes from always being agreeable. It looks like nodding when you want to object, laughing when something doesn't feel right, and saying sure when your whole body is screaming no. At first, people seem to like you. You become easy to be around, low conflict, always pleasant. But then something strange happens. You realize they don't truly hear you. They don't ask what you want. They forget you in the group. They cross boundaries, interrupt you, or make decisions without considering your voice. And suddenly, it hits you. Being liked doesn't mean being respected. In fact, the two can exist on completely different planets. We're wired to want connection. That's not weakness, that's biology. But what often gets confused is this idea that approval and respect are the same. They're not. One is about comfort, the other is about depth. One says, "You make me feel good." The other says, "I see your value and I trust it." And the truth is, most people settle for being liked because it feels safer. It creates less tension. But being respected, that requires discomfort. That requires standing alone sometimes. It means choosing what's right for your soul over what feels good in the moment. And that's a muscle most people never build. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming who you truly are means letting go of who the world wants you to be. It means risking the silence that comes when people don't agree. It means walking away from groups, friendships, even careers that only accept you under certain conditions. And that kind of self-honesty is terrifying, but it's also what forges real self-respect. And when that respect starts within, it naturally commands it from others. There's a moment in everyone's life where they have to choose, do I want to be popular or do I want to be principled? Because chasing popularity often means performing for people. You bend, you mold, you shrink yourself to fit the room. But being principled, that's different. That's when you walk in and take up your real space, not arrogantly, but honestly. It's when you say what you mean, and mean what you say. It's when you start speaking from your center, not from your fear. And that shift, it changes how people see you. Suddenly, you're not just nice. You're someone they listen to, someone they trust, even if they don't always agree. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This isn't just moral advice, it's tactical. When you consistently live by your own internal compass, people feel it. They stop trying to manipulate you. They stop pushing your boundaries because they know there are consequences. You're no longer just liked because you're convenient. You're respected because you're solid. The reason many people fear this shift is because it often comes with loss. You might lose a few people. Some won't like the new you who doesn't bend so easily. And that's okay. Let them go. Because what you gain in that process is priceless. You gain alignment. You gain peace. You gain the quiet strength of knowing you didn't betray yourself just to be accepted. And people do notice. The ones who value integrity, who want depth, who move with purpose, those people find you. And those are the ones worth having in your life. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." When you think you know what respect looks like, you stop seeking the truth about it. But real respect is never just about charm or surface. It's about who you become when no one's clapping, when you show up anyway, when you say no without explaining, when you sit in discomfort rather than violate your truth. That's where it lives, in the quiet, in the tension, in the courage to disappoint. Let's be clear, you don't need to become cold, harsh, or unapproachable to be respected. You don't need to abandon kindness. In fact, kindness with boundaries is the most powerful form of strength. It says, "I can care for you without betraying me." And that balance, that's rare. That's what creates influence that lasts. People may like 100 others, but they'll respect the one who stands firm, who holds the line, who chooses honesty over comfort every time. Consistency, building confidence over time. There's something deeply calming about someone who does exactly what they say they will. No dramatics, no surprises, just quiet, consistent follow-through. In a world obsessed with quick wins and loud results, we often forget how powerful it is to be predictable in the best way. And I don't mean boring, I mean dependable. Someone who shows up, not just once or twice when it's convenient, but over and over, even when no one is watching. That kind of consistency builds something rare. Trust, not just from others, but from yourself. We don't usually notice the way small actions stack. One gym session feels good, but 3 months of sticking to it changes your posture, your energy, the way people see you. One honest conversation builds connection, but 10 build trust. One promise kept earns appreciation, but 100 promises kept, even the tiny, silent ones, build a reputation. That's what consistency really is. It's quiet, but it speaks volumes. It's invisible, but it shapes how the world responds to you. It's not flashy or instant, and that's why most people give up on it too soon. You don't become trustworthy by talking about it. You become trustworthy by proving it, repeatedly. And not just when things are easy. Real consistency is forged in resistance. It's showing up on the days when everything inside you wants to pull back. It's honoring your word, not just because it's convenient, but because it defines your character. There's a confidence that comes from discipline, the kind that doesn't need to shout. You don't need to constantly tell people you're reliable or strong, they'll feel it. They'll start to sense it when they see you show up for your responsibilities, for your boundaries, and most importantly, for yourself. Here's the part most people overlook. People are always watching your patterns, not just your potential. You can be talented, passionate, even brilliant, but if you're inconsistent, you'll never be fully trusted. Think about someone in your life who's hot and cold. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they disappear, sometimes they keep their word, sometimes they ghost. How much mental energy do you spend wondering if they'll actually follow through? Now flip that around. If you want others to believe in you, to rely on you, to respect you, you can't leave them guessing. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's the process, not perfection, not performance, just quiet, steady alignment between what you say and what you do. The beautiful part is, once you start practicing it, confidence builds naturally. You stop overthinking, you stop doubting, you start trusting yourself, and when that happens, your energy shifts. People feel safer around you. You're no longer the person with great ideas and weak execution. You're the one who actually gets things done. But let's be honest, consistency isn't always exciting. In fact, it's often repetitive. You do the same habits, follow the same structure, and sometimes it feels like nothing's happening. But that's where growth hides, underneath the routine. Just like you don't notice yourself getting stronger day by day in the gym. But one day you lift something heavy and realize you've changed. Stoicism reminds us not to be seduced by instant gratification. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Waiting for motivation, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting to feel ready, that's how time slips by." Consistency isn't about waiting, it's about acting anyway. Think of your life like a structure. Every small act of consistency is a brick. Alone, they might seem insignificant, but over time, you're building a foundation. And when things get shaky, when emotions run high or circumstances change, it's that foundation that keeps you grounded. People don't need you to be a superhero. They just need to know you'll be there, that you're solid, that you don't disappear when it gets uncomfortable. That's the kind of presence that earns deep respect, because it's rare. You can have charm, charisma, even brilliance, but none of that replaces the power of being reliable. Consistency makes you credible, and credibility is what turns respect from a moment into a legacy. So if you're feeling overlooked or underestimated, don't get louder. Get more consistent. Show up more fully. Keep your word more tightly. Build that invisible weight behind your name. And before you know it, people will stop questioning what you're capable of. They'll already know, because your actions told them. Over time, and without needing to explain yourself, you'll become someone they trust, and someone you trust too. Setting clear boundaries. It usually starts with something small. Someone makes a comment that feels a little off. You brush it off. Then they do it again, only this time it's more direct. Still, you laugh it away, not wanting to seem too sensitive. Before you know it, a pattern has formed. They've learned exactly how far they can go with you, and you didn't even realize it. That's the thing about boundaries. If you don't set them early, life will set them for you, and it's rarely in your favor. The people who end up walking all over you aren't always malicious. Sometimes they're just testing the shape of the space you've allowed. And if the walls are soft, they'll keep pushing. We all want to be liked. We all want to avoid conflict. But there's a cost to being agreeable all the time, and it usually comes at the expense of our peace. If you've ever felt drained by certain people, constantly second-guessing your own needs just to keep things smooth, that's your inner self asking for boundaries, and setting them doesn't make you difficult, it makes you clear. Clarity is a gift, not just to you, but to everyone around you. It lets people know what's okay and what's not. And clarity breeds respect, because people may not like a boundary at first, but they will understand it if you hold firm. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you constantly allow behavior that doesn't sit right with you, you begin to internalize it. Your self-respect fades. Your confidence takes a hit. You start second-guessing your instincts. But when you start setting boundaries, when you say, "I'm not okay with this," you start dyeing your soul in strength instead of submission. That shift may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time, it becomes your armor. The truth is, setting a boundary is only half the work. The real strength lies in enforcing it. You can tell someone your limits, but if you keep forgiving every time they cross them, those words lose meaning. Think of it like locking your front door, but leaving the key under the mat. A boundary without consequence is just a suggestion, and people don't respect suggestions, they respect standards. That doesn't mean you have to be cold or harsh. Enforcing a boundary doesn't require yelling or slamming doors. Sometimes it's as simple as silence, distance, choosing not to engage in the same pattern again. Carl Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Boundaries begin there. They're rooted in knowing what honors you and what diminishes you, and then refusing to accept anything that pulls you out of alignment with that truth. That kind of self-acceptance is powerful. It says, "I trust myself enough to protect my energy, even if it disappoints someone else." And yes, some people will leave. Some may call you selfish. But the people who truly value you, they'll rise to meet your standard, or they'll quietly walk away, and that's a win either way. One of the biggest myths about boundaries is that they push people away. The truth is, they reveal who's truly willing to stay and grow with you. Without boundaries, relationships become lopsided. One person gives while the other takes. Resentment brews. Communication breaks down. But when there's mutual respect, when both people understand where the lines are drawn, something beautiful happens. Trust deepens. Connection strengthens. You both feel safe because you're not walking on eggshells. You're walking in truth. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Boundaries are one of the most profound ways we practice self-mastery. They remind us that we don't have to attend every argument we're invited to. We don't have to explain our no 10 different ways. We don't need to shrink ourselves just to fit someone else's comfort zone. Mastery doesn't mean control over others. It means control over our reactions, our choices, and our space. And that space, it's sacred. Seneca once wrote, "As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." The quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of your boundaries. If you're constantly drained, constantly anxious, constantly unsure of where you stand with people, it's time to examine the walls around your peace. Are they strong enough? Are they being honored? And more importantly, are you the one enforcing them? You don't have to explain your boundaries to everyone. You don't need their approval. What you need is alignment. When your actions match your values, when your no is just as strong as your yes, you become unshakable, not loud, not aggressive, just clear. And clarity, over time, becomes power. Not because it controls others, but because it frees you. The path to earning respect. There's a quiet kind of power in someone who knows what they're doing. You feel it before they even speak. It's not arrogance, it's not loud confidence, it's the calm presence of someone who's put in the work, day after day, month after month, when no one was watching. That kind of respect doesn't happen by chance. It's built through repetition, refinement, and deep focus. And in a world obsessed with shortcuts and surface-level results, true mastery stands out like a lighthouse. It draws people in without trying, because excellence is magnetic. Too often we want recognition without the grind. We want to be seen as valuable, respected, admired, but we skip the step of becoming excellent. We tell ourselves that who we are should be enough. And while, yes, your worth isn't tied to your productivity, your influence absolutely is. You might be a kind person, a good listener, someone with a big heart, and those things matter. But when it comes to gaining respect in the world, people look at results. They notice contribution, and they remember consistency. The beauty of mastery is that it doesn't require natural talent. What it requires is commitment, discipline, the willingness to be bad at something long enough to get good, the patience to endure plateaus, the humility to keep learning. Mastery is the long game. It's saying, I'm not here to impress today, I'm here to improve for the next decade. And that mindset, that's rare, that's Stoic. Epictetus said, no great thing is created suddenly. It's a reminder that real value, real respect is never rushed. It's earned over time. When you dedicate yourself to something, whether it's your career, a craft, a skill, you start to change from the inside out. Your posture shifts, your voice steadies. You don't need validation to feel solid. You become the validation. People sense it. They ask your opinion more often. They listen when you speak, not because you forced them to, but because you carry the kind of clarity that only comes from competence. And competence? That's built in silence, one brick at a time. Here's the trap most people fall into. They dabble. They try something for a week, maybe a month, and then they move on. The moment it gets hard or uncomfortable, they quit. But discomfort is the gatekeeper of growth. Those who push through it, who show up even when they don't feel like it, are the ones who separate themselves from the crowd. Seneca said, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Every challenge you face in the journey toward mastery is refining you. It's sculpting you into someone sharper, steadier, and harder to ignore. Think of the people you admire most. Whether it's a leader, a creator, an athlete, or a thinker, they didn't get there by accident. They chose a path, and they walked it when no one was cheering, when it was boring, when it was lonely, when it felt like no progress was being made. That's the sacrifice that comes with mastery. You trade temporary comfort for long-term strength, and over time, that trade pays off, not just in skill, but in the quiet respect of others who recognize your discipline. Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. If you want to be excellent, it has to become part of your rhythm. Something you return to daily, not because someone is watching, but because you refuse to be average. And here's the reward. When you become excellent at what you do, people don't just respect your skill. They start respecting your time, your energy, your standards. They know you don't settle, so they rise when they stand next to you. The respect that comes from mastery isn't loud or attention-seeking. It's quiet, grounded, and deeply felt. It's the kind that enters a room before you speak, the kind that makes people pause when you offer insight. Because they know you've put in the work. They know you've tested your ideas, failed forward, and earned every inch of your expertise. That kind of presence doesn't demand respect. It commands it, through action, not words. Actions speak louder. There's something powerful about a person who doesn't need to announce their intentions. Someone who doesn't go around telling the world what they're about to do, but simply does it. No build-up, no speeches, just motion. It's rare, isn't it? Because we live in a time where talking about what you're going to do often gets more attention than actually doing it. But over time, people stop listening to words. They start watching patterns. They don't care what you said you'd build. They care about what's standing in front of them now. That's why actions speak louder, not because they're flashy, but because they're real, tangible, unmistakable. The moment you start aligning your behavior with your words, people start responding differently. You don't have to ask them to take you seriously. You become someone who commands seriousness, not because you're perfect, but because you follow through. The more your life reflects your values, not just in theory, but in daily decisions, the more magnetic you become. We all know someone who talks a big game. They're always hyped about their next move, their future success, their big plans. But you check back in 6 months and nothing's changed. Same excuses, same lack of motion. It doesn't make them bad people. It just means they haven't yet learned that credibility is earned, not declared. You don't earn respect by convincing people. You earn it by becoming someone they can't ignore. Someone who shows up, not once in a while, but consistently. Someone who honors commitments, especially the ones they make to themselves. Think about how rare that is. Most people can't even stick to their own word, let alone keep their promises to others. So when someone sees you do both, reliably, steadily, they start seeing you differently. They trust your word more. They listen more closely. That's not arrogance. That's earned presence. You know what's more powerful than proving people wrong? Not even wasting energy trying. Just living so truthfully, so consistently, that over time their doubt fades into silence. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain your journey. You just keep building, keep improving, and soon your results become your resume. Your actions become your story. And people who once overlooked you have no choice but to look again. Aristotle said, "Character is revealed through action." And what he meant is that talk can be rehearsed, but action is instinctual. You don't just stumble into consistent behavior. It has to be practiced, intentional, rooted in something deeper. That's what makes it so convincing, because it's not performance. It's who you've become. Let this sink in. People don't remember your declarations. They remember your discipline. They remember the day you showed up even when no one clapped. The month you stayed focused when everything felt slow. The season you kept growing in silence. That's what builds reputation. That's what earns you a seat at the table. Not the flash, but the foundation. Respect isn't something you ask for. It's the natural byproduct of discipline, clarity, and execution. And when those three things line up, day after day, week after week, you become someone who moves through the world with quiet force. You don't have to chase validation. It starts arriving uninvited. And that's not ego. It's gravity. You become a person people want to be around, learn from, and work with. Not because you shouted, but because you showed. Earn respect through results. You don't have to be perfect to be respected, but you do have to be real. And being real isn't about sharing everything or shouting your worth from the rooftops. It's about one thing: alignment. When the way you think, speak, and act are all pulling in the same direction, people feel that. There's a kind of integrity you carry that doesn't need to be explained. You become someone who doesn't just talk about values, but actually lives by them. And that's what earns respect. Not your titles, not your intentions, your results. There's power in that kind of simplicity. You don't have to convince anyone of your goodness, your strength, or your potential. Just be it, live it, breathe it. And if that takes time, so be it. Because nothing that lasts is built quickly. The people who earn real respect, the kind that sticks, are the ones who show up over and over again, not needing applause, just focused on the process. They let their work accumulate until one day it speaks louder than anything they could have said. Carl Jung once said, The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. But this isn't just about parenting, it's about potential. When you don't live fully into your purpose, when your actions don't reflect your inner truth, you don't just disappoint others, you disappoint yourself. And that disappointment grows quiet. It sits in your bones. It makes you doubt yourself in subtle ways. But when you start aligning your life with what you believe, when you start producing outcomes that match your deepest values, that's when your self-respect begins to heal. And when you respect yourself, others follow. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone will like you when you live with integrity. When your actions start reflecting your standards, some people will fall away. That's okay. Respect and approval are two very different things. Approval comes and goes. But respect, that's rooted in how well you walk your talk. You can disagree with someone and still respect the way they carry themselves, because you know they're not pretending, they're not performing, they're being exactly who they say they are. And that's rare. Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." In other words, figure out what you stand for, and then let your results reflect it. Don't try to earn respect through noise or charm or image. Earn it through consistency, through discipline, through showing up when it's hard, and choosing your values when they cost you something. That's how character is built, and that's what people remember. Not the words you said, the things you've done. Respect built on results doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need an audience. It holds its own. When you've produced something real, whether that's a career you've built, a skill you've mastered, or a life you've lived with quiet integrity, it shows. People take notice, not because you told them to, but because the evidence is undeniable. And evidence carries weight. It cuts through opinions, gossip, and temporary trends. Because no matter how the world shifts, truth always rises, and your results are your truth. Seneca once said, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." The climb to self-respect, to external respect, is never smooth. There will be doubt, rejection, silence. But if you stay steady, if you keep moving forward, doing the work, refining yourself with every setback, you earn something far more valuable than attention. You earn trust. And trust is the foundation of all meaningful influence. It's the quiet agreement the world makes with you. You are who you say you are. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you quietly become. Not through noise, not through needing to be seen, but through the quiet strength of living in full alignment with who you are. When your actions speak, the world listens. Stay true, stay steady, and let your life echo louder than words. If this spoke to you, there's another video waiting on the screen that will take you even deeper. Watch it now, and keep walking this path with intention. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal.